I like The Conjuring, especially the first two. They feature creepy villains and some excellent sequences, but this list features 10 movies guaranteed to scare the shit out of you. Each pick on this list was released after the first Conjuring. Most picks are hidden gems you've likely never heard of, like the unhinged, haunting flick We Are Still Here, and the sexy and disturbing Suitable Flesh starring Heather Graham. Usually I'd rank these by how strongly I recommend them, but this list is ranked by how terrifying each flick is, with my number one pick being way too horrifying to finish for mainstream audiences. And we'll start with my bottom pick, the least scary movie on this list.
I always thought I could protect her. What took her from me is still out there.
But I still highly recommend The Headhunter, which feels like a mix between The 13th Warrior and Alien. Yes, Alien. It's a dark fantasy movie set in medieval times. You're really just following one soldier, I guess we'll say. He's got a suit of armor, a sword, and that's about all. He's got a little cabin, but there's something lurking out in the darkness trying to kill him. This movie's also somewhat reminiscent of Pitch Black, but it's a very low budget movie. There's not a lot of special effects or anything like that. A lot of it just comes from the filmmaking itself. The sense of dread that they're able to ratchet up, and the setting's really unique for The Headhunter. Now, there's not a lot of story. Like I said, you're following one character, so there's not even really any dialogue in this movie. Not much to speak of anyway, but it's true blue horror stuff, frightening as hell. If you can look past some of the lower budget elements, I think you can really get into this one.
Vengeance is upon us.
My number 9 pick is one of the most subtly creepy movies I think I've ever seen. It's scary as hell, but the scares come from really subtle filmmaking touches in The Blackcoat's Daughter.
I said just a knife!
Catherine, are you concerned about something?
I mean, I just wish you could stay and see my performance.
This is actually written and directed by Osgood Perkins, the writer and director of Longlegs, and I actually think this is a superior movie. While it doesn't really have the wow factor of the Nicolas Cage performance, The Blackcoat's Daughter gets into your bones in a way that I think Longlegs was maybe trying to. This is one that has stuck with me. Now, it's a very slow-paced movie. You do have to be in the mood for that, and the movie's not really going to hold your hand, but my goodness can this thing give you the willies, especially like watching it alone in the dark. It is definitely one of those movies. It's also got an interesting mystery that unfolds, but my goodness, by the time you get to the end, this thing haunted me the way movies like The Ring did, but with like a fraction of the budget or special effects, which I think is pretty remarkable.
You guys have moved in to one weird town.
We Are Still Here is a low-budget haunting movie that's better than most big-budget haunting movies. Just like my previous recommendation, The Blackcoat's Daughter, it's got this real creep factor. They ratchet it up, especially early on in the movie, and then things actually take off with We Are Still Here in a way you're not going to expect a low-budget movie like this to do. They went for it with this movie. I actually think they nailed it. For a movie done with limited resources like this one gets under your bones, creeps the hell out of you, but also goes just over the top in kind of the best way possible, again, for a horror movie like this. Now, I'm the first person to say that horror reboots suck, almost always with very rare exceptions. The First Omen is one of those exceptions.
You don't have to be afraid. God has great plans for you.
And maybe it's because this is truly just a prequel rather than a reboot, but to be revisiting the Omen franchise all these years later, you would not think it would work very well, and I think it does largely because The First Omen kind of feels like a vintage horror movie. Now, it's glossier, it's more polished, the way you're going to want a modern movie to look and feel, but it's a period piece, and it's just incredibly well done. There's actually a lot of money on the screen than The First Omen. And it's not just for wow factor. The First Omen is a top quality horror movie in the vein of things like the original Omen and The Exorcist. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not going to be as legendary as movies like those, but if you thought this was just another reboot or prequel, it's much more than that.
You don't have to be afraid. This child is his way.
If you enjoyed Weapons, which is actually still in theaters in some places, you want something a bit creepier, try Zach Cregger's first horror film, Barbarian. This movie was a surprise hit, and for good reason. Not only is it well written and interesting, and not only does it take you to a place I don't think I've ever been in a horror movie, but the pace and the structure of this movie is also very different and works surprisingly well. This movie actually holds a lot of secrets up front, lets you know that there's a lot of secrets, and then half the fun of this movie is just figuring out what's happening. The other half is kind of a split between some tongue-in-cheek, slightly humorous things and some horrific horror elements. I mean, terrifying stuff in this movie. The further you go down the rabbit hole in Barbarian, the darker and creepier it gets.
This is perfectly natural.
Now, my number 5 pick is a good example of showing you how I structured this list. It's not as good as some of the movies I just mentioned, but it is wilder, creepier, and darker, and somehow sexier with Suitable Flesh. A movie that manages to be insanely sexy and disgusting at the same time. Heather Graham plays a therapist who begins having an affair with one of her patients, a much younger patient, by the way. But there's this evil book in the mix, some, H.P. Lovecraft, almost Evil Dead type stuff. A lot of humor, like ridiculous kills. It's gory as all get out. It's got kind of a David Cronenberg thing going on, but also this weird retro kind of David Lynch feel. It's a festival movie, the type of movie crowds probably went nuts for back when it was hitting the film festivals. You can check it out now. Not the scariest thing on this list, but it's darker than you would think.
Me? I'm just Dandy. Brandy?
Suitable Flesh.
For a truly horrifying movie, though, without so much as a sliver of supernatural stuff in it, I've got Green Room.
Let him bleed.
You're coming.
Here we go.
Technically, this is a thriller movie, but it is shot and filmed and structured just like a horror movie. It feels raw, real, and is insanely terrifying. You follow a punk band doing a show out in a remote, barn location that turns out to be a neo-Nazi club. When they notice something happened in the green room that is definitely against the law, they are then not allowed to leave the green room. They're now trapped and have to find their way out. And not only is Patrick Stewart playing a fantastic bad guy in this movie, like a truly wicked character, he reportedly got so freaked out when he read the script he had to go around and lock all his windows and doors. It's that type of movie, and even though it does feel pretty grounded throughout, it goes over the top just enough to satisfy, that movie-watching itch, yet it is far and away the most realistic movie on this list. Now, before we get to the absolute most terrifying picks on this list, I do want to take a minute to tell you about today's sponsor, Magic Spoon, which has been my late-night treat of choice for years now. And that's because Magic Spoon is a delicious high-protein treat that tastes just like cereals you remember from when you were a kid. Magic Spoon is keto-friendly with only 4 to 5 net grams of carbs per serving, but a whopping 13 to 14 grams of protein per serving with 0 grams of sugar and no artificial flavors. In recent years, I've enjoyed getting in shape and eating right, but I still get a sweet tooth late at night, and Magic Spoon does a great job of satisfying that sweet tooth while also helping me pack in those extra grams of protein at the end of a long day. Magic Spoon is also gluten-free, soy-free, and grain-free, making it easy to incorporate into your diet. If you don't want a bowl of cereal because you don't do dairy, they also have these little treats that are familiar. Again, a whopping 12 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar in this bad boy, soy, and only 2 net carbs, making it a fantastic high-protein treat. But my favorite thing they offer is the granola. Not only is it delicious and sweet with a few added ingredients compared to the cereal, but I put it on yogurt with a little bit of honey, and it is to die for. And right now, my viewers get to save $5 off your first purchase when you visit magicspoon.com/flick. And again, Magic Spoon has just been the most pleasant way of me reaching my protein goals. Use my link, get the discount. I highly recommend it. But speaking of things I highly recommend, let's get to the scariest movies on this list.
They like you.
Talk to Me was a runaway hit, and not only is this movie scary, but it's also one of the most creative horror movie plots I've seen in ages. The plot follows some teenagers that have come into possession of this weird hand, this almost voodoo type hand that causes them to be possessed when they grab it, and they kind of turn it into a party game. That's one of the things I loved about this movie, is it felt very much of the moment. Like, the young people here, they're putting these weird happenings on social media, and the energy behind all of that feels really authentic in this movie. But the core concept of this hand and how it possesses people reminds me of like early M. Night Shyamalan, like when he was making really good stuff, yet it's darker and creepier. It's just a totally original idea that can really creep you out, just the concept alone, and then it's delivered with, you know, kind of expert filmmaking. For a horror flick that is all scares, virtually no story, I recommend the practical effects extravaganza Evil Dead Rise. Now, as far as stories go, again, there is one technically, but it's not going to carry you through this movie. If you don't know, the original Evil Dead movies, directed by Sam Raimi, really sort of took practical effects to new heights. They didn't invent practical effects, but they basically reinvented them and how to implement them for those movies. They're insane, and these new ones, even though they're fairly spaced out, have carried the torch, but with a very different tone, with sort of the raw, evil, dark tone that you would expect from a story like this, whereas the original Sam Raimi versions are kind of tongue-in-cheek and campy and more fun than you might remember. These new ones are not fun at all. Like, there is probably not a single moment of comic relief in Evil Dead Rise. It is a blood-soaked, demonic-ridden house of horrors horror flick, and even though I don't love it, I really do appreciate what they're doing with these Evil Dead movies, and for me, even though it's a gross movie, this is like just watching a full display of the most cutting-edge practical effects technology, or at least that's how I watch these movies. So, even though it's my number 2 pick, it's not one that really scares me, but I gotta imagine anybody watching this that's not glued into the practical effects, it has got to be one of the most terrifying movies of all time. Or at least you'd have to agree visually, it's one of the most horrifying things ever put to film. Maybe second to my number 1 pick, Baskin. This one is from Turkey. It's currently on AMC Plus or Shudder. You will have to read subtitles for it. But my goodness, it's got to be one of the darkest things I've ever seen. It's legitimately difficult to finish. You follow a group of cops that stumble upon a black mass in an abandoned building, essentially stumbling upon the gates to hell. This movie has not just stunning visuals at times, but also just really repulsive visuals as well. This movie is a legitimate descent into hell, the way movies like Jacob's Ladder are, yet it's more of a physical descent into hell than a psychological one. If you came to this list looking for some real and raw horror movies, they don't get much more raw than Baskin. I'm telling you, if you're into this stuff, this is a gem that will be well worth pursuing and reading the subtitles for. If you are repulsed by disturbing content, I don't know how you made it this far in this video, but do not, and I will say it again, do not pursue this movie. But here's the list recap along with streaming services currently hosting these movies. They will not be available on those platforms forever, so click that subscribe button to make sure you get my recommendations as soon as I make them and you don't miss out on these titles before they're gone. But thanks for watching this special horror episode, and you will see me on the next one.